Morning. Can everybody hear me out there? Good. I'm Plympton Selectman John Trainer. Welcome to today's Memorial Day service. Memorial Day. The day we as a nation come together as one body to honor and remember our servicemen and women who answered America's call to service and paid the ultimate price. Memorial Day is the day when we stand up as Americans and say, thank you. We remember you. We are grateful to you. We must also remember the brave parents of the military fallen, who often become isolated after this tragic loss. Friends don't know what to say about a grief that no words can touch. We don't have a word for a parent who has lost a child. So these mothers and fathers of our military fallen call themselves Gold Star parents, based in the tradition of the service flag that hung in the homes during World War II. Each blue star on the banner stood for a loved one overseas. Each gold star honored those who were never coming home. So on this Memorial Day, let us remember and honor all our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors who made the ultimate sacrifice to their country. May they rest in peace. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please keep standing if you're able. The music director.
This is what you say.
Yep. Please rise as you are able, as Ms. Maggie Maresco, if I said it right. Yep. Great. Music director for the Dennett Elementary School, leads the Dennett Elementary School choir in our national anthem.
Charlotte, Ava, right here. Who's on? Here. Come here, Ava, here. No, Ava, go here. Here is, on the shoulder. More there. I am here, no more face. There. So the windows. The window. Charlie's in the front. Charlie's in the one.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight
Ava, Nora.
You're next on the list.
Ollie.
Thank you. Let me now introduce our guest speaker, Stephen Lewis. Stephen is a longtime resident, Sergeant First Class, U.S. Army, retired. Steve enlisted right out of high school in June 1966. Took his basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then went to Fort Eustis, Virginia, for helicopter crew chief school. After a stint in France and Germany, 19-year-old Stephen Lewis received orders to proceed to Vietnam, arriving in February 1968. Steve was assigned to Headquarters Company, 199th Light Infantry Brigade, Aviation Section. Steve returned to civilian life in February 1970, but continued his military service with 2 years in active reserve, followed by 22 years in the National Guard. Please join me in welcoming Steve Lewis.
Thank you. I am privileged to be speaking on this Day of Remembrance. I was born in Littleton, New Hampshire. I'm a Cow Hampshire farm boy by origin. Yep. Selectman John Traynor asked me to speak today as to my remembrance of losses during my tour in Vietnam. I was assigned an aircraft. It was the newest one in the fleet. It was a UH-1H model, which meant it had the biggest engine. And that's the one the general wanted to fly. So it was during that time of flying the general around that I met his aide, enlisted aide, which at that time was a person who was put there just for a month. Officer aide stayed, the enlisted aide was a month on, month off, or a month on, and that was it. The young man who came out of the infantry battalion was a fellow by the name of Lyle Palmer from Blandon, Utah. Got to the end of his month and he said to me one day, I don't want to go back to the field, so can you find a spot for me? We said, no, talk to the pilots. He did. He ended up in our operations. Now, one night, I had nothing to do because my aircraft was elsewhere, being repaired by a higher level maintenance. So I decided to take a duty for what was called airfield charge of quarters. And the soldiers that had to do it were non-crew members. Anyway, so I took the duty that night, and I'm sitting up in operations, and Lyle comes back from the club. Now, the next day, he was to board the airplane and fly back to the States. He was done. Along late at night, after he'd come by and was bragging, I'm going back to the world, I heard a very loud bang, very loud bang. I stood up, turned around, and threw the master switch to turn the power off in the hangar. I could hear rounds going off, thinking we were under a ground attack, and we weren't. Then I heard my fellow people and mustered the courage to look over the panel and back into the back of the hangar, there was no stairs anymore. The back was demolished. The room that I was in was the one that was preserved. So I could hear my fellow members coming out, and I said, look for Lyle, something's got to be done with him, something's got to be wrong with him. And then finally maneuvered my way to the front window and jumped out. And there was a wall that had been kicked out and a nice little incline. I ran down that. And then I looked over and I saw Lyle laying there, deceased. It was a moment. I had seen a deceased person before. We flew in a resupply one time and they took the supplies off and they said, we've got this soldier who was recently killed and we'd like to get him evac'd. So they loaded him on. He looked like a young man with sleeping on the litter. We flew him back to a hospital where they took him for grace and registration. On another instance, my section had a OH-6 aircraft coming in on approach, and a Huey was coming in behind it, ended up over it. The rotor of the small helicopter got tangled up in the landing gear of the big one, and it crashed and burned, and 2 people were killed. Sergeant Sergeant Mason Fulmar and Chief Warrant Officer Charles Plummer. That's my war experiences. Anyway, the purpose of Memorial Day, growing up, we used to have to get our flowers down to the cemetery and on the graves of the ancestors prior to Memorial Day. And I grew up thinking that it was about ancestors. And it's not. It's about the fallen, those fallen in combat. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, Steve. Not an easy thing to recite. At this time, we would like to present the Boston Post cane to Dorothy Cushman. As many of you are aware, in August of 1909, the publisher of the Boston Post newspaper forwarded to all the boards of selectmen in New England a gold-headed ebony cane with the request that it be presented to the oldest citizen of the town as a show of respect. It is our great honor to present it today. Bree, if you would do the honors. Two canes are better than one, John. Now, please welcome Memorial Day Committee member Kathy Ferguson.
Good morning. We have another acknowledgement to make. At this time, on behalf of the town, I would like to acknowledge the late Harry Weichel Jr. Harry was a Marine veteran, and at the time of his death, worked at the transfer station and served as the vice chairman/treasurer on the Board of Health. Previously, Harry had volunteered on the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Public Safety Building Committee. Harry's love and commitment to the town of Plympton will be greatly missed, and we present this gift of flowers to his wife, Bobby, and his family. Thank you. Thank you, Bree. At this time, I I would like to read the list. At this time, I would like to read the list of Memorial Day, for Memorial Day, of our veterans, past and present. Here in Plympton, we do not celebrate Armed Forces Day, and we don't always celebrate Veterans Day. Therefore, we read all the names today. Vinnie Amoni, Army. Jared Anderson, Army. John Anderson, Army. Jack Andrews, Army. Arthur Belleville Jr., Army. William Benavides, Navy. Lawson H. Billings, Marines. Thomas Bowes, Navy and Marines. Bruce Bradford, Navy. David Brown, Air Force. Frank P. Bush, Navy Seabees. Irv Butler, Army. Dean Chadbourne, Army. Wes Chadbourne, Coast Guard. David Chandler, Army. Elliot Chandler, Army. Charles Chase, Army. Paul Columbi, Marines. Bruce Conant, Navy. Jacob Cook, Navy. Roger Crocker, Navy. Tim Dempsey, Marines. James Denman, Navy. David Ditterman, Navy. John Enright, Air Force. Kevin Follis, Marines. Daniel Ferguson, Navy. Jacob Ferguson, Navy. Norman Ferguson, Sr., Army. Ward Ferguson, Army. James Furlot, Marines. Zach Flood, Air Force. Joe Freitas, Army. Charles Fuller, Navy. Fred Fuller, Navy. Chris Ganley, Navy. Patrick Ganley, Marines. David Garceau, Navy. Vincent Gillespie, Navy. Bob Gillette, Air Force. Richard Gridorenko, Air Force. Mark Halfinger, Air Force. Rick Halfinger, Air Force. Bill Hayes, Army. Paul Heideke, U.S. Naval Reserve. Ian Hickey, Army. John R. Hemicki, Navy. Jocelyn Holmes, Navy. Robert Holt, Navy. Robert Jacobson, Air Force. Clifford Jordan, Navy. Donald Joy, Marines. Sylvester Daniel Joy, Navy. Sylvester Daniel Joy Jr., Army. Jeff Joyce, Army. Bob Carling, Navy. Barbara Kierstead, Army and Air National Guard. Edward W. Kierstead, Army. Gloria Kierstead, Air Force. James E. Kierstead, Robert Kierstead, Air Force. Kierstead, Army. Russell Kierstead, Air Force. David Kanicolas, Marines. William King, Army. Steve Lewis, Army. Paul Lizell, Navy. Steve Lyons, Navy Seabees. Alan McCormick, Army. Alex McDonald, Air Force. Scott McLeod, Army. David Medeiros, Marines. Mario M. Martins, Navy. Carl Matheson, Army Air Force. Edward McCabe, Army. Robert McManus, Marines. Robert Milbury, Navy. Edward Miller, Navy. Jeff Montello, Marines. David Morris, Navy. J. Morris, Navy. Frank Moulton, Army. David Murphy, Marines. David Murphy, Jr., Navy. Neil Murphy, Navy Seabees. Arthur O'Callahan, Air Force. Chase Perkins, Marines. Mike Perkins, Marines and Coast Guard. Robert Peters, Army National Guard. John Pettengill, Navy. Richard Proctor, Army. Kevin Rafferty, National Guard. Raymond Reed, Army. Doug Reese, Army. Richard Reynolds, Army. Conrad Russell, Navy. Richard Ruxton, Navy Seabees. Eric Sales, Army. Carl Sales, Army. Peter Schultz, Navy. Eugene F. Seaver, Navy. Richard Shire, Navy. Doris Silva, Coast Guard. Christine Snow, Army. Clint Stetson, Navy. William B. Stinchfield, Jr., Navy. Charlene Stover, Air Force. Alec Thompson, Marines. Gary Thompson, Air Force. Jim Thompson, Army. Jeremy Toohey, Army. Wesley Tunks, Army. Al Vautrin, Navy. Navy, Army, excuse me. Patrick Vitt, Marines. John H. Walker, Air Force. Edmund A. Wollaston Jr., Navy. John Wollaston, Navy. Robert Wollaston, Army. Our Veterans Agent, Roxanne Whitbeck, Navy. Howard White, National Guard. Ira White, Air Force. William L. Lanny White, Air Force and Army National Guard. Harry Weichel Jr., Marines. Rebecca Wilder, Navy. Charles Winslow, Navy Seabees. Samuel Cole Wright, Army. Edward Urowitz, Marines. And Daniel L. Zentz, Air Force. Now we have 3 recitations from Duxton Elementary School students. The first student is Ollie Novin, who will read the winning essay, What Memorial Day Means to Me.
What Memorial Day Means to Me by Ollie Novin. I really enjoy Memorial Day because it is a very special holiday to celebrate the work and effort the armed forces put in to give us safety for our enemies. Memorial Day is a very important holiday. Memorial Day is a holiday that many people celebrate for different reasons. Some people celebrate it by inviting family over and having dinner together. Also, some people go to parades in towns. These are some fun events people do over Memorial Day weekend. But the meaning behind Memorial Day is a lot deeper than that. Memorial Day is a very important holiday when people in the United States remember the soldiers and or family members that fought for our country. Some people also talk about their loved ones and express their feelings to others that have may lost someone they're loved as well. I really enjoy Memorial Day because it is a day when people remember and show respect for their loved ones who have died for our country. And I am honored to have a family member that have fought for me and our country. And I think other people would agree. Thank you.
Please welcome Nora Murphy, who will recite In Flanders Field.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Please welcome Ava Heafy, who will now recite the Gettysburg Address.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met here on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather to be here dedicated to the unfinished work, which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us rather to be here dedicated to the grateful task for dedicated to the great task before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Sorry about the mistake.
Okay, at this time, Declan Eddy from the Silver Lake Band will play taps, and our Plympton Boy Scouts will lay the wreaths. Thank you. On behalf of the Memorial Day Committee, Bridget and I would like to thank all our parade participants and the people who made this event possible. Kim Adams, Vicki Alberti, Deb Anderson from the Plympton Halifax Express, Cheryl Burke, DRK Mobile Toilets, Dennett Elementary School, Dean Jafarian, Ezrella Farm in Halifax, Plympton Fire Department, Plympton Library Director Mike Slauson, Plympton Police Department, Plympton Highway Department, Keith Hallfinger and Keelan Smith from Sunrise Gardens, Scott Sawchuck from Sawchuck Farms, Gary Thompson from Thompson Tree Service, and again Roxanne Whitbeck, Plympton Veterans Agent. I'd now like to introduce our newest selectman, Dana Smith, who will give the closing remarks.
Thank you for coming. You are all invited to join the parade participants as they march to the cemetery behind the church to conclude our ceremony. You are also invited to join us for the following events after the ceremony. The Plympton Fire Department is hosting a Touch a Truck event at the fire station, and the Firefighters Association will be serving hamburgers, hot dogs, chips, and drinks. There is a make-your-own Memorial Day button craft in the children's room at the Plympton Library, and a make-your-own s'more station on the back patio. Antique vehicles and Plympton Highway Department equipment will be on display in the townhouse parking lot. And thank you very much for coming today and supporting this town event. It's great to see all of you out here, and have a great day.